Hello, everybody, and welcome to Obscurities in Miniatures. It is a Friday morning that this is going up, which means only one thing. It means it must be time for yet another obscurity in literature. And today is pretty darn obscure because I'm trying to recall where I first discovered said piece of literature, and I'm coming up absolutely blank. I know the name, the art rang a bell when I first stumbled across this, but I'm trying to go back deeper, and maybe I need like hypnotic regression or something to figure it out, but I absolutely have no idea where I first discovered Aogachou. Aogachou would basically, if I'm remembering my poor Japanese correctly, would be like the blue goose. So obviously that's not the person's name. But she is quite an interesting artist, and this is the Libra of the Griffin. You can see the Griffin obviously on the cover here. And you'll notice immediately that it is quite a grotesque task that the Griffin is attending to, which is probably what initially got my attention with Aogachou's stuff. If you've listened to me ramble on enough about some of these Japanese art books that I spend way too much time obsessing over and searching for more clues and details and going deeper down that rabbit hole into, one of my fondest things to hunt down are artists that were quite prolific in the online card game art world prior to everything going fully 3D, prior to the mass mobilization of high-end, high-powered 3D rendering software and capabilities of modern smartphones. So like kind of in my mind, like the golden years would be like around 2010 to about 2016, 17. You've got a lot of just piles of artwork getting made for various card games because it was a lot cheaper to commission artists to do nice, full color card artwork rather than animate everything in extensive 3D, at least back then. I'm assuming that's where I first stumbled upon Aogachou. And so this is an interesting book because it's a bit of a retrospective, but from my understanding and my studies, she's a bit more of a newcomer on the card artwork scene compared to some of the other people. If you recall, I've shown a lot of books and artwork by Toshiaki Takayama, who's probably one of my favorites. And if you guys are interested in even more, I've got plenty more where that came from. I think I've got almost all of his self-published doujin books at this point. We can get into that at some other point. But so this book starts off with a nice little fairy tale type parable. Where we have, I've tried to read this, and unfortunately my kanji capabilities are somewhat limited, and naturally when trying to go over said kanji with family members that are a heck of a lot more fluent than I am, nobody wants to help. Very Aesop in its storytelling, but inevitably ends up with all the animals banding together. And then we've got this poor bat that's being picked on, and eventually the Griffin comes and just tears everything to shreds. But that's not where the real fun of the book is. The real fun is when we start to get into the original works. And like I said, when looking at the cover, a lot more of this stuff tends to resonate with me. It's got a very dark fantasy vibe going with it. Where some of this stuff originated, I'm not sure. Of course, it did say original works, but it feels like there's a bit of a medieval throwback in terms of the creatures and the things that are happening in the artwork. It almost reads like a poem down here about the harpies and Kerberos. Interesting. If there's another thing that I'm a big sucker for when it comes to card artwork, or just trading card games in general, Yeah, I mean, obviously sex sells with a lot of this stuff, and you usually have all the scantily clad ladies, but one of the things I guess that really sets out her work here in this book, and just in general, is the fact that it's almost all monster-based. And, you know, while I do appreciate a curvaceous lady in my artwork, just as much as anybody else does, my heart has always gone out to the more disturbing side of the genre. And it's interesting, you know, I feel like this is like one of those territories that unfortunately tends to be very male-dominated, and I don't really know why. As I said, there's a lot of graphic grotesquerie occurring in a lot of this artwork. But there's a lot of monsters too, so that makes it okay. Again, we've got a bit of a fairy tale vibe thing going here. I don't know what the little pigs are up to as they are killing the little pig. Okay. I'm assuming that's Red Riding Wolf or something. Just some very interesting themed artwork here. I'm going to take a wild guess that probably all of this is getting done digitally. Nevertheless, quite the competent artist. And like I said, much more of a focus on creatures on the beast side rather than the beauty. I really like this piece. The heavy line work reminds me of a lot of other artists, like Tetsuya Kurata, another artist I'm a big fan of. As we start digging deeper, why does that make me think of Nier? I think it's supposed to be Alice related. Possibly like Humpty Dumpty type people. The roses, the rabbit, Alice. Does it say anything about Alice here? I'm not sure what that means. But then again, on the next page, we've got then a Jabberwocky fighting a scantily clad Alice. Okay. Something different. I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at here. I think it's like an undead horse with a lion underneath it. Again, some of these pictures give off a bit of a medieval, like, heraldry image. More monsters. Monsters are always a plus. And as we get through with the original artwork, as I start to, we get into almost eldritch horror looking stuff. This one doesn't have it, it just says Mandrake. Without any further explanation. Some of this line art makes me think of like Danny Cruz, who did a lot of early Kickstarter fantasy, dark fantasy artwork. A lot of Mirsa artwork. A lot of board game stuff. Cover of the book. Okay, this is when we're getting into more familiar territory. Commercial work. Right off the bat, we've got, you know, the typical trading card style, whether it's video games or actual physical card artwork. Something about the composition of those types of pieces always just really appeals to me, just as much as design works. I've always been a sucker, especially for monsters, and that's like a big gripe I have with a lot of Japanese art books for various video games, especially stuff like RPGs, that you think would have copious amounts of monster designs, and then, like, it's not even included. But let's have 25 pages of the same character in all their various outfits. And I'm like, I want to see more of the crazy, weird monsters. Like the guy with a weird, questionable, we'll say that's a gecko, right? Or some kind of a reptile. Like, we'll let you draw your own conclusions, whatever that thing is going on and where it's coming from. A-Team. It doesn't even say which game this is from. I'm assuming this is going to be some kind of a card game again, but all monster or, well, at least screwed up human, if we have to go with more humanoid stuff based. Lost Reavers from Bandai Namco. I know, that doesn't even ring a bell. You guys familiar with it? She's doing artwork for it. I'm coming up, I don't know what these games are. It's crazy. And I know that there were an absolute pile of various games out there with this style of artwork. In fact, I'm going to probably, I've got a couple books of just this kind of like game artwork. Mostly human related. I'm going to probably have to go ramble on about. But again, it's really cool. Maybe this is what I've seen. This feels like no, I was going to say, it feels like Battle Spirits artwork. Bandai's card game that died in the US. And continues to be published in Japan with all sorts of bizarre expansions. As is often the case. Last Chronicle. Okay, that's a name that sounds familiar. Hobby Japan put out Last Chronicle, yet another card game. Excuse me. I'm like yawning and drinking coffee at the same time. But I also want to say that Hobby Japan put out a bunch of books of Last Chronicle artwork, and if it's anything like all the other typical Hobby Japan art books, it's going to be a big fat tome full of stuff. Now this is when things get really weird and really familiar. I don't know where these pieces came from. It says it's just Daikaiju Battle from Bandai and Tsuburaya Pro. Now, there have been a multitude of Ultraman-based card games, video games with card games attached to them. So I'm really curious where these two pieces came from, Tyrant and Pigmon here. Both very well-known Ultraman monsters. But then we've got Kamen Rider and I want to say this is Gokaiger, just based on the wings. What is this? These are all Bandai. But it doesn't say... This is from Gambaride. Shin Kamen Rider here. Gambaride was, if I remember correctly, one of the first of the Kamen Rider card-based arcade games where you would pay your 100 yen and the machine would spit out a card which you would then scan or slide or insert or whatever it is, and your character on the card would show up in the game, of which they've had a lot of variations over the years on all of their various properties, and I'm assuming that's what our Super Sentai friend is here as well. Some interesting kaiju designs for Vanguard. It's always disappointed me that Vanguard from Bushiroad Card Fight Vanguard has never done like any official artwork books, because they have such copious amounts. I mean, you know, Wizards of the Coast was doing it for a while with Magic. I don't know if I've ever done any Magic ones. I've got, I think, all of them. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. If I have them, you guys want to see them? Any particular ones, let me know. Innistrad, Zendikar, Ravnica, all that stuff. Dragons in uniform are always a nice thing to see. But again, it's just such a nice change of pace to see something that isn't, you know, sexy ladies from this scene of artists, because that's what we often find. And not that there's anything wrong with that, not that I don't enjoy that at times, but it is kind of cool to see something different and somebody focused and dedicated to more of the monstrosity, grotesquerie side. And then at the end of the book, we have a bit of an interview with the artist, kind of a round table type thing. And I'm pretty sure that's her in the blue, but I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. So again, I have no idea where I first came across this one. if you guys have any familiarity, I'm very curious as well. Funny thing is, the back of this book with that golden, this black cover like this, I had it sitting next to a mono book. I think I did a video on before that had a similar style color, and I keep getting the books mixed up. Almost similar size, similar design, but both are fun stuff. So hopefully you found something new. Hopefully you have a new artist yourselves to add to the pile of things to search for. And if you guys do come across anything that is of interest, besides obviously their Twitter or Pixiv or whatever, all that stuff. I mean, I've already tracked all that down. I'll let you guys go discover that on your own. But any other interesting books, by all means, let me know. And if you guys are really interested or chomping at the bits to see anything, again, drop me a line. Let me know in Discord. I'm always on the hunt and in the mood for new and exciting things. And hopefully I am more than happy, as is the case, to always show them to you as well. So, with that said, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye.